Right, Demon Red Mist here for video 2 of my Cyberlink Powerdirector very simple guide. Video 2 is going to be about image creation. Now if you're watching this, you haven't seen video 1 and you're very new to the Cyberlink Powerdirector, check out video 1. It's quite informative, and that's about importing files, folders and importing YouTube music. Okay, I'm going to crack straight on with the image creation here. Now you'll be able to see on the screen that I've got a sort of like a self image. It's actually the picture I use on my as my desktop background at the moment. It's not an image that I've created, I'll be honest. However, I have added the Demon Red Mist, the DP design, and the little devil or demon in the top right corner. Now, to be honest, I added those bits on paint.net. As I mentioned on video 1, I do tend to do most of my image editing on paint.net. It's much better, especially for having transparency on layers, and that is something that Cyberlink struggles with. It's very good with fading in a full image from transparent to visible, but it's not very good. For example, if I wanted to, the DNA strand here, if I wanted to extract just the DNA strand from that image, I can't do that on Cyberlink Powerdirector. I can on paint.net. And even, for example, if I did extract that DNA strand on paint.net and transferred it onto Cyberlink Powerdirector and took a screenshot of it or save it as an image, it will save it with a black background or a white background depending on what image I have on the back. And I'll try and show that a little bit. I'm going to import a couple of files here from the DGT Dynamic GT League files that I've created. I'm going to go to the video border. To give an example, I'll use the latest one. Okay, so this is basically a Dynamic GT League video border that I have made for the Dynamic GT League, and that's because on the replay system on Gran Turismo Sport, you have a black bar across the top of the screen, a black bar across the bottom of the screen, and it looks awful for a video if you're trying to do some kind of highlights. So I've created this video, this border. Now if I actually pop this image onto my timeline here, I'm going to put it onto row 2 because this is effectively a layering system. I'm going to import another image as well. I'll get one of the logos, and I'll also get something else as well. I'm just going to quickly import. If you want to know how to import these files in more detail, check out video 1. Let's see, I'm pretty sure this is where I find out I haven't got the file anymore. I should have a plain background, plain white background. Okay, I'm going to bring that in as well. Right, okay, so on my timeline I currently have the video border and the DGT League main logo. Now you can quite simply decrease the size or increase the size of your images on the screen. Very simple. It will keep its aspect ratio. However, if you do want to not keep your aspect ratio, you can click on modify, remove the maintain aspect ratio, click, and then when you change the size, it'll only move whichever side, like up or down or left or right, height and width, or diagonal if you like. Personally, when it comes to logos and stuff like that, I prefer to keep the maintain aspect ratio because then it keeps the image correct. Okay, I'm just going to quickly click cancel on this. If you try resizing something that doesn't quite work, click on cancel. If you're happy with it, click on save, and it won't save your whole file, it'll just save the little changes you've done, or you can quite simply click on undo until you get back to where you were. Right, so what I'm going to try and sort of quickly show you here is obviously the DGT main logo has a transparent background. I can show that by moving it now. So if I cover it over the border picture, you'll see that this blank space has no imagery. Right, so it's a logo with a transparent background, which is great stuff. That's what paint.net can do. I'm not going to do a video about paint.net. I've tried one before, it took fucking ages. Okay, so let's say for example we know that logo image has a transparent background. If I remove the video border, which also has a transparent bit in the middle, that's why you can see the logo when it's on it. Okay, if I was to now take a screenshot of this by clicking on the take a snapshot of the video and save it, it'll save it onto my storyboard. If I now click on this and bring this onto my timeline, let's remove this first image, I do not need it anymore. I will show about leaving gaps and removing gaps in a moment, didn't mean to do that bit. Okay, so this now looks exactly the same, DGT logo with a transparent background. However, when I put the video border, again it still looks correct, and if I resize it, it still looks correct. However, if I adjust the layer so the logo is on the lower layer than the video border, we now have a black background, and that's what Cyberlink Powerdirector unfortunately does. Now the reason why I've brought the white background is because if you want an image with a background, you can bring don't worry about what I'm deleting here at the moment. You can bring your own background, whether it be a plain white background or any other image that you decide to use. You can then put your secondary image on it and have your logo or whatever it may be on top of whatever background you wish. Sounds very simple, that, and to be honest, it is. So if you do want a full image, Cyberlink Powerdirector can be very, very good for that. I will also show that on an image, if you highlight this blue ring, well, not necessarily highlight, but if you cover it, you'll see your cursor changes. If you click and hold, you can also rotate your images. Not that that looks particularly good, but it does show that you can very simply rotate any of your layers. All you have to do is highlight them. I'm going to rotate the background if I wanted. So if you wanted to make a corner border, you could do that quite easily. So yeah, just to quickly show you that that's rotation is something that is very easy to do on this. So yeah, undo my rotations. So yeah, there we go. Okay, what I'm going to do now is, I mean that's just sort of a quick explanation about the lack of transparency on the images. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to create the image that is my contents list for these videos, because I haven't done it yet, so I'm about to create it now. So a bit like video 1, get yourself prepared for the things that you want to use if you can. So I have got a couple of items ready, I believe. So import your items. Okay, where has it gone? Computers for you, great stuff. It doesn't help when you've got something that's in white and the background images are in white. Was it in this file? No. Well, that's good stuff. I mean, I'm going to take these two images anyway as my background images. Okay, that's confused me. I am missing an important piece of my project here. A box is what I want, but not that one. It should be a white bordered box. Okay, that is rather odd. I know where it is. I've actually put it in the right place. Okay, so I was going to do a DGT image here. So in my backgrounds, I have a white dot, I have a white box, and I also have a white box that I have made on paint.net. Also going to pull in a couple of other background images as well, because I'm not sure exactly which one of these two I'm going to go with, so I do tend to like to bring a few others as well. Okay, so I'm going to make my contents list image here, and I am going to do this in 100% as simplest way as possible. So I've been on the internet, I've had a look for some background images, I found a couple that I think are pretty cool. I must admit I do like this one, so I am going to use this image. Now you'll see that the image is not quite the right size, and that basically means that this image here is not in the 1920 by 1080 size. Most of the pictures you're better off running 1920 by 1080. So if you are going to use another image editor like paint.net, try and size everything with that aspect ratio in mind. So don't go making a little bit of a, for example, the white box that I've created here. There's no point me making that on a base image that is 3000 by 2000, because it's going to be massively too big for this, and I'm going to have to resize it, and it's just shit you don't need to deal with. Smaller's not always too bad because it's very simple to increase the size. However, when you do, as we'll see with this, it can affect the quality of the image very much so. Now if you have what I've got here, where I can't see the whole of my image on the screen, there's two things you can do. One is you can press and hold Control and zoom out, and it's not working. Okay, we'll do it the other way. Just above keyframe here, and it might not always be above keyframe, but there's a little row of dots. You highlight that and you can scroll down and you can get to see much more of the image. There is also another sneaky way to do it, which I found, which is, for example, if I add another image in here, that's highlighted. If I go back to this one, it's not done it. Bloody hell, usually it would show me the full image. But anyway, there we go. You can, if you wish, unlock the preview window so that you can see it slightly bigger as well and increase the size. But I just find that a little bit awkward. I prefer to have the image docked. Right, looking at this, the quality of the image is nowhere near as good as I would like it to be. However, I am just going to take a test screenshot of it. I won't use that. I'll use TT1. It is a very good idea to do test screenshots, because sometimes, although that quality might not look too good, the actual image quality can sometimes change, or your image quality here can be very good, but once it takes a picture, it can be pretty terrible. And that can depend on perhaps the type of writing you put on, whether, for example, stripes or like this has the fading of colours. It might look great initially, but when you actually take the image of it, it can be pretty crap. Right, well, that image is not going to work for me because of the quality of it, so I'm going to remove those and we'll have a look at this one. Again, it's not as big as it should be, but I'm just going to increase the size and see how it looks. That could do for me for now. So okay, I'm going to go with that one for the moment. I'm happy with that. Okay, I've got a simple background. I've not had to do any necessarily work to like create that background. You can if you want, as I mentioned, you can use your own backgrounds. But now, for one of the reasons for doing imagery tends to be for YouTube video thumbnails, or if you want to have a Facebook post with a picture with some information written on it, it's very handy. Is the Cyberlink Powerdirector for that. Okay, so on the left hand side on the toolbar, click on Title Room, and you do have a number of options. I mean, you can use their pre-selected sort of title scenes if you wish, and that can be used on a video file. Personally, I'm not a massive fan of them because I've never been able to find what I really want. Okay, very simple editor, or title should I say. You got two main ones really to use. The default is just very simple, or the 3D. Now the 3D can be pretty good, but it can also be a little bit of a tricky pain in the backside. But I'm going to show you the default one to begin with. Okay, you'll see that these two are different sizes. You can, if you wish, increase the size of your image or decrease the size of your title. But to be honest, considering that this is going to be a static picture, it wouldn't matter if this is that big and that's that big. It will make no difference, because when it comes to taking your picture, you're going to position your marker at a point where it's got all the information that you want. Okay. Click on the default title, and you can right click on your mouse if you want, set a duration for it. That's the same for images and videos. You can edit the title, you can select all, which would highlight every item on your timeline. You can remove it, you can copy it, or you can cut it. You can, personally, we just want to edit the title for the moment. Just to show you as well, you do have modify and duration here. Duration is exactly what you expect it to be, and modify is basically exactly the same as edit title. So you can click on modify, or you can click on edit title. Okay, once we're in here, you do have a number of pre-selectable fonts and colours and stuff like that. A couple of them are okay, some of them are really not, and I believe you can add your own character types in there as well, but personally I don't tend to bother. You have font types, and you have plenty of them, and you can, if you wish, Google search font types, download any that you want, install them to your PC, and it should automatically install onto Cyberlink as well. If I'm wrong on that, I apologise. Maybe you can ask me how to do it and I'll have a look at some point. Okay, so yeah, so there's plenty of fonts available. Now you will see that on the right hand side the fonts are changing. On occasion you may go to change the font type and it doesn't actually change on the screen. See, it won't work for me now. If I actually write in what I want to write, okay, so let's see, we'll keep it nice and simple. Video 1, importing files, and you see I'm going off the screen at the moment, but I'm not too bothered about that because I'm going to move it in a second. Importing files, folders, and YouTube music. So yeah, I've gone massively off the image at the moment, but I'm not too worried because I just want to move the title anyway. Now when it comes to the marker, the border around your title, obviously you can change your size in here using these dots if you wish. I wouldn't recommend doing that. You might as well just use your font size over here, but you'll also see there's a little green dot. If you highlight the green dot, you can actually rotate. Now this is something that is much easier to do on this than it is on paint.net, because on paint.net you basically have to write what you want, save it, then import it onto the picture that you've got, then rotate it, and it's a lot of faffing for me. I prefer to be able to I mean, for example, on paint.net I could write what I want, save it, bring it onto Cyberlink and put a border around it and rotate it. So that's where I combine the two. Okay, yeah, so you can rotate it however you wish. Okay, so I've written all of that in there. If I then go to change the font, this is where it's going to work, but on occasion it doesn't. Sorry, the font. Right, font is changing. What about the size? Okay, the size is changing as well. Okay, most of the time this doesn't work. If you find yourself in that situation where you're trying to get it to change the size or the font and it's not happening, don't panic. Just come down here and click on this is obviously number 1. If I added another title there'd be a number 200, and I'll show you that in a moment. But click on here on this timeline, the bit you're editing, and then you can change the font and the size. So if you do have a problem there, that's how you fix that. Okay, looking at this, I can tell straight away that the font is too big, but having said that, I'm going to need to change the font type anyway. No idea which one I'm going to go for. You know what, that'll do. Okay, want to be able to see the writing on all of it, so I can't really have red, white or blue. Didn't think that bit through, did I? But that's sometimes the problem you have when you come to a little bit of video editing, so you may have to go with black. So click on black and click on OK. You can, if you wish, try and pre-select your own sort of colour schemes. Personally, I tend to just go with the basic stuff unless I'm in a real pickle and want to change a colour, but that's one of the sort of advanced things you can have a look at yourself. Okay, so I'm going to go for black. That font will do, but obviously now the size is way too big, so I'm going to have to edit it a little bit. That size may just about do, because it fits just about everything on it. Now looking at it, the black on the red is not quite working, and to be honest, this is something you may find when doing image creation. You may go, right, I love that background, I'm going to use that, but then when you come to add other stuff on, it might not work, so you may have to change your background, or for example add a border to your writing, which is a feature that I really do like on Cyberlink, because you can change the colour of your font face. Very simple here on font face, like so. You can add a reflection, which gives a nice reflection. That's very good depending on what kind of imagery you're doing. Like for example, if you had a picture of water and you wanted to put a boat on it, you could give it a reflection and things like that. Very good. You can also increase or decrease the transparency of the shadow. Sorry, the reflection. You can add a shadow, which, when you look at it like that, you go, hang on a minute, that's a bit shit, that is. But to be honest, when it comes to shadows, I tend to go with perhaps a bit of a grey, try and make it look like a proper shadow, but it can quite often really make an image, or if like there was a box on here and you give it a bit of a shadow, changing the direction of the shadow can really make something pop on an image, or even on a video. But I tend to do it mainly for images. So you can adjust your distance, which, change it like that, it's no longer a shadow really. You can adjust the blur of it, which you can't really see too well. I'll move the distance. Yeah, so you can make it more blurry. Now that blur is something that, depending on what you're putting the shadow on, whether it's a really fancy font, or a really distinctive shape, if you go too far with the blur and the transparency, when it captures the image, it won't work. It struggles to do it. So yeah, you can have a play around with these blurs and transparencies anyway. You can also fill the shadow if you wish, so that now it's no longer a separate piece of writing underneath, it is just a proper full shadow. And again, play about with those, it can work really, really well. And as also said, using this dial, you can quite simply change which direction the shadow is going. So you could have shadows going in different directions depending on their location on the screen. Okay, as I mentioned, border though, this is the one when it comes to writing I do tend to like, but you can also do it with boxes, and boxes or images. I'll show you that in a moment. So you can adjust the size. Again, you can adjust the blur. Blur on this, again, the capture can struggle with that. You can play about with the transparency, which can give a nice look, but again, sometimes the capture can struggle with it. And you can also change the colour of it, which is fairly obvious, to be honest. And going with yellow writing with a black border, that does kind of pop a little bit more now. So for the moment, I'm going to go with that. Right, there are more settings here, 3D settings. Feel free to have a play with those. I don't tend to use the 3D settings here. And also image settings, you're more than welcome to give that more of a try. The object settings, to do with the transparency, that just gives you a generic, like how see-through you want it to be. Positioning, you could do it in the decimals here. Personally, I tend to just move it about, unless I have a real problem. If I tried to duplicate this or have another bit of text, I'll try and show you this actually. You can, for example, I'm going to be doing like video 1, video 2, right? So I could quite simply just write all of these out. Now if we can clearly see here that the spaces are way too big between video 1, video 2, video 3. You can adjust those spacings here with the choose a line spacing. Now sometimes I've had it where this doesn't work either, but if it doesn't, don't panic. You can also go into the minus, so you can try and reduce the spacings. But you'll see, even though I'm changing these aren't really changing. And this is what I have had before. So this is where I will now click on the actual file clip down here, and you'll see it's gone to 0. Even though I changed it to -10, it hasn't changed anything. So we'll give it another try. Now it's changed. I'm glad it showed that. But obviously that's still not enough for me. You can click in the box, and it's the same for the font size, and write your own amount that you wish to have. Press enter, and it should work, but it hasn't. Okay, we'll try again. Okay, it's not doing it. Let's see if it needs a space in there. Yeah, okay, it's not having it. I have had it work before. Great guide video this is, eh? Fucking hell. Right. Well, in that case then, I ain't going to be using that font. Because it should be able to go into the lower minus. Okay, so what I'll do with that, I'll pop that back to 0, and I'm going to have no choice but to change the font. But now I will, because I've got the multiple lines, I can have a better look at one that will simply work as it is. Okay, right, that'll do. Okay, if I go for a space between the videos, the gap is too big. Let's see if I can reduce that a bit more, because I don't want it to just be too close together because of what I'm going to try and add. That'll do for me. Right, okay, so when you're writing something like I'm going to be, where it's just a simple list, you can just keep going with all of the writing that you want to do. So video 3, video 4, and so on. However, if I wanted, for example, to have this writing up in the top left corner, but I wanted writing in the bottom right corner, but I want it to be exactly the same font and style, you can just right click, do copy, click on paste, and then move it over, and then write what you want to write. And you can do that multiple times, do it as many times as you like. And when you do this, down here, this now says number 3 next to it. So you can scroll up, and you've got number 1, that's the first box, the first portion of what we did. Number 2, and the next portion of what we did. And number 3, the next portion of what we did. Now you may be wondering what all this is about down here. I will get onto that in a moment. Actually I'll get onto that with the video creation rather than the image, because if it's a static image, you're not going to be having the position changing or the rotation changing or the transparency or the scale during the course of a static image. If you're able to do that, you're better than I am, because if it's static, it ain't fucking moving. Anyway, if you don't want these, you've added them and you don't want them, you can hit undo, or you can highlight it and remove, which is what we're going to do with those, because I want to position this properly. Now that I've moved this as well, sometimes you may do work on an image and go, you know what, that doesn't look right, it looks off center. This box down here, align objects, a very useful tool. You can align to the left, you can align to the right, you can align horizontal center, which is very, very useful, or for example vertical center. So you can do vertical and horizontal aligns, or align to canvas, align to selected objects. But very useful tool for making sure that what you have on your image is in the middle, because it can very easily look wrong if it's off to the side. So even for example, if I was going to have a title, I would always try and center the title manually, and have the rest of it centered by horizontal center. That way you can make sure that the majority of your writing is in the middle, and you can manually adjust where your title would be. Okay, let's just quickly move this back. Now obviously this is a very, very basic simple example of an image editor on this. I will perhaps go into a slightly more detailed one, but I don't want these videos to be to be too long. It's meant to be sort of a quick example, a quick guide. Also make sure you spell stuff right, it would be good. Okay, and just keep writing. Now obviously on this box as well you can right click and you can change the colour of your font, the border, your actual font type, font size, all that kind of stuff. You can insert a new title, so if you want more writing but in a completely different font, you can click on insert new. Very easy to do. What you can't do though is, for example, have a notepad or copy and paste writing from another system, other software, whether it's Notepad, Facebook, whatever it might be, and then paste it into here. It doesn't work, unfortunately, which is very annoying for if you're doing a video that's got a shitload of writing on it. It's very fucking annoying. Anyway, so this is how you make a very simple image with a little bit of writing on. But what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to save this here for the moment because I can complete that without you having to sit there watching me type. If I now wanted to add additional things to my actual image, for example, my own logo, for example, you can easily do that as well. Just go to import files, go to the folder that has your imagery in it that you want to use. I'll use this one. I'll use DP Design logo if I can find it. Okay, right in front of my face, and then I can adjust the size, as I mentioned, very easily, and pop my own logo in the bottom corner. And obviously you can do that as many times as you like. On this left hand side on your timeline though, just to quickly show you, you have rows. Row 1, video or imagery and sound and effects. I don't tend to use effects. You then have row 2, imagery and sound, row 3, imagery and sound, and quite often if you add another item in, it will give you an additional row. So you can just keep adding stuff in and it will give you additional rows. However, if you've got multiple layers, I know this is looking a bit shit at the moment, but I'm just doing this as an example. If you now have multiple layers and you go, actually, you know what, I need something to be behind my main background, I need something on top of that imagery, whether it be, okay, for example, this is a white, but no, I'll use this white box. I want this white box to be on the left hand side of my image here. You can click on add additional video stroke audio tracks to the timeline, and then you can add it wherever you want, below track 6 or further down, or above track 6, track 5, above track 4, or above track 1. So rather than moving each item down a row, you can just add a video file above track 1, which it hasn't, that's because I didn't click OK. So yeah, click on above track 1, click on OK, and it'll add a new image file. You can do it with the audio files as well. So now I have a new image file and a new audio file. So I can, if I want, add the white box on. Now you're not going to see it because it's behind the background, but it's if you do need to add something further up your layers, that's how you do it. Okay, on this left hand side you can also hide or enable or disable, as it says there, so you can hide them or unhide them, and with the sound you can mute a row or unmute a row. Very handy tab, but I thought I'd quickly show you that as well. Another quick handy tool is this icon here, view entire movie. If you click on that, it will show you your whole storyline, and with your storyline as well, you can press and hold Control and scroll up on your mouse, and you can zoom in and scroll back on your mouse and zoom out. More useful for video editing, but I'll get onto that in a little while. Okay, I just need to undo some of these because I'm not going to want them on this image. But what I will do is, as I said, I don't want you to just sit there watching me type. That'd be very boring for you. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to save this, and I will finish this off later, and I'll show you slightly different form of image, a bit more in depth. Okay, so for saving it, it's dead simple. Click on File. For the first time you're saving it, click on Save Project As, and as I said, title it however you wish. Okay, and I can come to that later on. Now that I've finished with that for the moment, I said I'm going to show you slightly different imagery. Once it's saved, you can quite simply click on File, click on New Project, and it will remove everything you've done and totally clear your storyboard. When you load a project, it will put everything back into the storyboard that you originally had. Okay, what I'm going to try and do now is just, as I said, go slightly a little more in depth with a different style of imagery. Okay, let's import this image for the moment. Okay, so here's an image that I did for Dynamic GT League. DGT SGP designed the car, but I've done the border. Now it's pretty much the same as the video border, except it has no sides. Now again, I did most of that image on the main picture on paint.net, but I want to show you that you can pretty much do exactly the same thing to a degree on Cyberlink Powerdirector. So basically what I'm going to try and do is recreate this image just using Cyberlink Powerdirector. Now one thing I can tell you straight away is the background, where it's red in the middle and it fades to black. I cannot create that on the Cyberlink Powerdirector, but that is where Google searching or using paint.net to get a base background image is very useful. What I'm going to do is use a slightly different picture as the background, to be honest. I'll use one of the others that I brought in. So I'll go with, let's go with this one. Okay, so the only real difference between the picture that's there and the picture that I'm now going to create is going to be the style of the background of the border. Okay, I've imported this particular image, so I'm going to use that, and this is the correct size. It's 1920 by 1080. And if I now want to try and cut out the middle bit of the screen, you can't necessarily cut it out, but one thing I could do is add a mask. So if we click on Modify and then go up to the top here to Mask, you have a number of base shapes. You can create your own shapes as well, by the way. There might be one that I did in there. No, I think I deleted it. You can create your own shapes or download your own shapes and import it on here. But I'm going to go with the square. I'm also going to remove the maintain aspect ratio, because what I'm going to do is basically see if I can go like this, and now we can look at it and go, well, hang on a moment, this bit isn't the bit we want to see. We want to be seeing this bit and this bit. Well, that's where Invert Mask comes in very, very handy. So we click on Invert Mask, and it's not done what I expected it to do. Okay, let's try one of the other masks then. It's such a simple guide, even I've got it fucking wrong. Okay, so you can use a mask to try and create the border in the same way. However, you will see it doesn't work as effectively. I could try using or try looking at some of the other masks, but again, it just doesn't, it will never, unfortunately, be able to see exactly the same, because when resizing the mask, you can't go off the screen to get this part to disappear. Let's see if we can rotate it. No, you can't rotate it, I don't think. No, you can drag, you can zoom. From what I can tell, you can't rotate it. So regarding the mask, unfortunately that's not quite going to work for the style that I want with the masks that are available on Cyberlink Powerdirector. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to give up. The masks are very useful on occasion though, to be fair. Do not be afraid of having to play about with them. You can also adjust mask opacity, so you can fade it, very similar to the previous imagery transparency that I showed you. Okay, so looking at it from that perspective, it would appear that we're stuffed, we can't create the border. Well, don't give up that easy. What I'm going to do here is go, right, okay, well what I'm going to want is basically the image of that Force India in the background. So let's import that base image. Dead easy. Wrong folder. 3 gobs is I'll tell you what TV, by the way. We'll get onto that in a little while. I'm going to go and find the picture of the car, so there we are. So this is the car that wants to be on the picture. Now I'm going to put that into row 1, but I can't see it anymore. I'm stuffed. Well, not really. You could quite simply just move your image so that it creates its own little border up at the top. You can now click on modify, and I'm not going to add a mask on this occasion. I'm actually going to add a border to give me the white line around the edge. Now that white line's a bit thick, a bit like me. That white line will do. Now what I don't necessarily want is in these corners is for it to actually show as a corner. So what I'm going to do is just increase the size a little bit, just so it gives me a straight white line across the screen. Okay, now I need that at the bottom. Now I could go with manually reproducing it, but I'm actually going to add a new row here. I'm going to click on the image I've used and I'm going to copy it. And when you come to pasting something onto your timeline, be very careful. Wherever the red marker is effectively where you're trying to paste it, and whichever of the timeline is highlighted is where you're trying to paste it. So even if I click here and do paste and overwrite, well I actually shouldn't have done overwrite, I should do insert, my apologies, paste and insert, it's moved the secondary image. Now you could go, well that's not a problem, I'll just move that one down. That's an easy fix for it. But if you've got multiple layers, it will have a knock-on effect that you don't want to get into. So try and get into the process of going, right, well if I want that in there, I'm going to move my marker out of the way. So basically beyond whatever you have got on your timeline, and then click on one of the rows that is clear and blank and it's not going to affect anything, and then paste it and then manually put it where you want. It's not a great example here because I haven't got a lot of items. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I do want to show I do want to show what I'm on about better here. So let me open up a project. Let's go with the DGT intro. Now this is obviously this is a video file, but it's the same for video files or imagery files, right? So this is an intro that I've already created, produced, and this is out there in use. But I'm just going to use this as an example. You'll see that there's a couple of different items, well, more than a couple. There's a fair few different items on this particular project. Now, confused me for a minute. Yeah, so there's a number of different items on this project. So if I wanted to let's say for example this picture was in here, right, but I wanted to copy it, so I click copy. If I don't move this marker, excuse me, for example, I'm going to highlight this. If the marker is over to the left hand side and it's highlighted here, and I click paste and insert, it's going to move this image if that's not necessarily where I want this image to be, if that makes any sense. It will cock up your alignments, so you are much better off going to the end of your video, clicking on any row, pasting your item in, and then manually going, right, well I want this over here. It just saves you that little bit of a cockle, because the last thing you want to do is spend hours and hours working on a project to then find something is slightly out of sync. But anyway, there we go. Right, let's bugger this off again. Let's get back to that image. Okay, so yeah, so we're still trying to recreate the border here. I can remove. Encountered a proper argument. How can an argument be improper? Okay, so now we've got a duplicate of the top box. So I can do this in one of two ways. I can just quite simply move this box down and keep going and keep going until I give myself some form of a border. Or I can actually rotate it, and rotating can be a little bit awkward at times, but to be fair, it does tend to like to give you a little lock on at 90 degrees. It is quite easy to get it absolutely spot on. And now hopefully that has pretty much given us an exact, near enough an exact duplicate of the top and bottom border. I can then now, if I wish, import all of the necessary items that I need. So the DGT strip, the DGT logo, and then quite simply, just as I showed on the early part of the video, just highlight the item that you want, pop it into your next row, and for example this will need resizing, so I can just simply resize it by clicking on the border, and there we go, that's the logo resized. We can get the strip. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're getting the gist of what I'm doing now, and looking at it and going, you know what, yeah, I could do that. Thinking about, I don't want that particular strip on it, I want that one. I'm going to resize it from the corner because it's already aligned in the bottom left corner, and then I can just increase the size and reposition it where I want. Okay, so what else is on the image of the dynamic G? So you are basically getting, you can see that I have pretty much, if I actually take a if I take a screenshot of this now, and it saves me having to complete the whole thing, you will pretty much be able to see that the process is getting to be exactly the same. You've got top and bottom border, you've got the logo on the top, you've got the strip on the bottom. The writing, what I have to do, as I showed earlier, is click on the title editor, drag one in, and then you can click on edit title, and then you can write in what you need. Change the colour of it so it can be seen. Change my font size. Aha, it's not doing it, look. It's not changing my font size. I told you I weren't making this shit up, you know. So this is where sometimes it won't change the font size for you. Click on the item in the timeline and then change the font size. You'll see that it works. I know I won't go fucking mental. The colour as well, thank you very much. And pop that up there just as an example. Okay, so it's not exactly 100% identical to this image, but you can see the basic process is there. So you can do all that kind of image editing on on Cyberlink Powerdirector. It is a very simple system to use as long as you've got everything you sort of want to have on your image ready, and any then writing that you need to add onto it, you can quite simply add onto it as well. Okay, last thing I'm just going to quickly do, I'm not going to continue going on there because you can see that the process is going in the right direction. So I'm just going to close this down, and I'm not going to save it. I would always recommend that you do save your projects, as I said earlier. I'm going to open no, 1A DB guide. Yeah, it's there, you dickhead. Right, okay. So, after I cutted that bit out, hopefully you didn't see. Yeah, I'm just going to nip back to this, because the last thing I just want to quickly show you, that what I'm going to try and do with my videos is I need to sort of highlight which of my videos it is on an image, and the way that I'm going to do that is by adding this little white box, right? And I'm going to adjust its size a little bit. Now I'm then going to have it highlight which one of the videos that it is, and you can see it doesn't quite fit properly, but that's not too much of a problem. So I'm going to click on modify, remove the maintain aspect ratio, and then I can actually manually adjust the size of it, and as long as it fits the writing in as it does there, I can then highlight exactly which video is which. And then when it comes to having done video 2, I can quite simply move my white box down to highlight the next video, and down to highlight the next video. So for things like thumbnails where you've got a for example season 1 race 1, and you have to change that race 1 to race 2, this is much better than paint.net for that, because as I mentioned, it's much easier to edit and save and know where you are, or even for little things like this, moving a simple white box to highlight one video to another, this is much easier and much better to do. Now you may be sitting there wondering, well, what's all this crop image, fix, enhance, power tool, slideshow, keyframe, duration? To be honest, you won't need to worry about this. I mean, for example, Dynamic GT League do not need to worry about this. Cropping the image is exactly that, it crops the image, but you're not going to be wanting to do that. Now you may be able to do it to create things like the borders, but to be honest, you shouldn't really have to. Fix and enhance, for Dynamic GT League, they don't really need to touch it. I've never really looked much into that one, I don't tend to bother. Power tools, this can be an interesting one because you can do photo rotation, or on a video you'll see later you can actually change the speed of a video, or even have it play in reverse instead. Quite funny for the audio. Slideshow is slideshow obviously, but I don't use that system. Keyframe is more to do with clip attributes. It's more, I tend to use this more for videos, so you don't have to worry about that until we get onto the video. And duration, again, you don't really need it for static images, so don't worry too much about these until we get onto the video editing. Okay, once you have completed your image, as I mentioned earlier, all you have to do is click on the camera and name your picture. Now what I would tend to do when you do take a picture, one of these snapshots as they call it, it will put it onto your storyboard here. It'll also save it on your computer into the Cyberlink files. Personally, I would then, like for YouTube thumbnails, I would then move it from the Cyberlink files into a specific folder for YouTube thumbnails. When you do that and you come back to, for example, change part of the title on your thumbnail picture, it will pop up a message saying that this image is no longer available. Well, you can just click ignore. However, when you first start out on Cyberlink, be very careful of clicking ignore, because if you've moved something that you shouldn't have, that is your one and only opportunity to retrieve it. If you don't click retrieve or to go and find it, you're not going to be able to get it back as easy. Whereas if you can click retrieve, it's a lot easier to fix your cock up. But anyway, I won't show you that, you'll just have to learn your own lesson. Right, that's it for this video. Nowhere near as short as it was intended to be, but there we go. That's video 2, image creation. The next video will be video 3, which is video creation. And I'm going to try and use the Dynamic GT League intro clip that I created, perhaps as an example. I'm not sure, I might have to have a look. Or I may just give a very, very simple explanation on that. But it is going to be a very, very basic how to import a video file, how to cut it, how to do some very basic stuff on it. It's not going to be a full-on, I'm going to make a movie. So there we go. Anyway, come and join us for that one, and we'll see how we get on.